Governor Pritzker, for the first time, calling for the removal of President Trump from office.
In the United States, a new political confrontation is unfolding. For the first time, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker has publicly called for the removal of President Donald Trump from office.
Governor Pritzker, for the first time, calling for the removal of President Trump from office.
This on the same day the president said dangerous cities like Chicago should be used as training grounds for the military.
The statement came just hours after the president suggested that high-crime cities like Chicago could serve as training grounds for the U.S. military. The comments triggered swift condemnation from Democratic leaders, caution from Republicans, and renewed debate over how far presidential authority should go. This report examines the political fallout, constitutional questions, and what we know about the military forces the president says he wants to deploy to Illinois. The United States has long debated the role of the federal government in addressing domestic crime. While federal law enforcement plays a role in criminal investigations and interstate operations, the deployment of military forces remains one of the most sensitive questions in American politics. At the center of this new confrontation is the city of Chicago, a major metropolitan hub that has struggled with violent crime, gun trafficking, and periodic gang-related conflicts. The president has repeatedly criticized Chicago's leadership, often pointing to crime statistics as evidence of what he calls failed democratic governance. Illinois officials counter that the administration has failed to address gun laws, economic inequality, and community development. This latest dispute intensified when President Trump, during a speech focused on public safety, referred to crime-affected cities as suitable places for training military units to restore order and prepare for real-world crisis conditions. The comments immediately drew national attention due to the implication that domestic urban spaces could become platforms for U.S. military readiness. This is CBNEWS. Subscribe to our channel for daily world news update. Stay tuned. Within hours of the president's remarks, Governor Pritzker held an impromptu press briefing at the state capitol. Visibly frustrated, he accused the president of making irresponsible statements, arguing that Chicago and other American cities are not military training zones. He went further, stating that Congress should act to remove the president from office, calling it, quote, a constitutional obligation when a president threatens to use military forces as domestic police. Political analysts note that Pritzker and Trump have clashed repeatedly over immigration, pandemic responses, and federal funding. However, even seasoned observers describe the governor's latest remarks as unusually direct and confrontational, marking one of the sharpest state-level rebukes of the administration since Trump took office. Central to the controversy are the president's claims that roughly 100 troops would be sent to Illinois. According to internal Pentagon planning documents reviewed by U.S. media outlets, the most likely personnel would come from the Illinois National Guard. Under normal conditions, National Guard units report to their state's governor. Only under federal activation orders do they report directly to the president. As of the latest briefings, defense officials say no deployment orders have been signed and that conversations remain preliminary. Senior officers, speaking anonymously to reporters, described the president's remarks as political rhetoric rather than concrete operational planning. Governors generally resist federal activation for domestic policing roles, citing concerns about escalation, civilian safety, and constitutional boundaries. Governor Pritzker has already stated that he would reject any attempt to deploy troops for what he described as photo-op policing or military theatrics. This dispute has also reignited a legal debate around the Insurrection Act, a centuries-old law that allows presidents to deploy the military domestically under limited circumstances. Historically, its use has been reserved for national emergencies, civil rights enforcement, and disaster responses, not for routine crime. Constitutional scholars point to three questions. First, does violent crime constitute grounds for military deployment without state consent? Second, who decides when a city is in a state of insurrection? And third, what safeguards prevent political misuse of military power? Legal experts say that any unilateral action by the White House would likely face immediate court challenges. Congressional Democrats have already signaled interest in hearings examining the modern limits of the Insurrection Act. Republican lawmakers, though cautious, have warned against any precedent that could normalize domestic military policing. Foreign policy observers note that the United States frequently criticizes other nations for deploying armies against civilian populations. Such actions abroad are often described as authoritarian overreach. Critics argue that U.S. credibility could suffer if the military is used in a similar manner domestically. Reaction in Washington was rapid. Democratic leaders largely backed the governor's condemnation, describing the president's remarks as undemocratic and dangerous. Some called for congressional inquiries, while others elevated discussions of censure or constitutional remedies. Republicans were more measured. While few endorsed Pritzker's call for removal, several expressed discomfort with the president's language. One GOP strategist described the situation as an unforced political crisis at a time when the administration seeks support for its broader domestic agenda. Meanwhile, pro-Trump media outlets defended the president, arguing that Chicago's crime statistics justify urgent federal attention. They contend that military training could help prepare for overseas missions and strengthen readiness for natural disasters and civil emergencies. Beyond Washington and Springfield, the rhetoric has stirred anxiety within Chicago's communities, where memories of tense police-community relations remain fresh. Civil liberties organizations warn that normalizing military presence in cities could erode trust, escalate confrontations, and blur the lines between law enforcement and warfare. Community groups argue that violence in Chicago is driven by structural issues: housing insecurity, lack of youth programs, economic disinvestment, and easy access to illegal firearms. They call for federal investment in schools, jobs, and mental health resources, not military involvement. Policing experts add that military personnel are not trained for civilian law enforcement. Their role is to defeat enemy combatants, not mediate domestic disputes. Experts warn that misaligning means could lead to unnecessary escalation and breaches of civil rights. As of tonight, no troops have been deployed and no legal procedures toward removal have begun. Yet the clash between President Trump and Governor Pritzker highlights deeper national questions about governance, security, and democracy. Whether the dispute fades or escalates will depend on decisions made in the coming days by the White House, by Congress, and by the Pentagon. For now, Illinois finds itself at the center of a broader national debate over the power of the presidency, the rights of states, and the boundaries of military force on American soil. CB News, bringing you World News Update. Thank you for watching.